The weeks that followed were exactly what Kale had expected. The Corallian and his group made good on their promise to make his life difficult. What did it do difficult? What they did not understand was that difficult was a relative term, and for someone from Earth, their idea of difficult was almost amusing. The first attack came during zero-gravity combat training. All cadets were required to learn how to fight in the weightless environment of space, and the training chambers were designed to simulate those conditions perfectly. Kale was paired with a Melvery cadet for a simple sparring exercise when he noticed something wrong with his safety harness. The automated systems that would catch him if he lost control were not responding properly. Someone had tampered with them. He realized this approximately 2 seconds before his opponent sent him spinning toward the chamber wall at high speed. Without the safety systems, he would hit the metal surface with enough force to break bones. Time seemed to slow down, the way it always did when his body recognized danger. This was another gift from Earth, an evolutionary response that had helped his ancestors survive encounters with predators that were faster and stronger than them. His mind processed options in fractions of a second. He could not stop his momentum, but he could redirect. I twisted his body in the air using techniques that the other cadets had never seen because they were not taught in any academy. These were techniques developed by humans who had learned to fall from great heights and survive. He hit the wall at an angle that distributed the impact across his entire body rather than concentrating it in one place. He pushed off immediately and used the bounce to control his spin. He landed on the opposite wall in a controlled crouch, as if he had planned the entire thing. Instructor, a grizzled veteran from a species Kale did not recognize, narrowed his eyes. "Impressive recovery, Cadet Vasquez," he said. "Your safety systems malfunctioned, but you adapted well." Kale glanced across the chamber to where Veth and his friends were. Watching their expressions showed surprise and disappointment. "Thank you, sir," Kale replied. "I have had practice with unexpected situations." That night, his uniform disappeared from his quarters. Academy regulations required all cadets to appear in proper uniform for morning inspection. Failure to do so meant demerits and punishment details. Kale searched his room thoroughly, but the uniform was gone. Someone had entered while he was at dinner and taken. I had two choices. He could report theft and be seen as weak and unable to handle his own problems, or he could face the consequences and show that their petty attacks could not break him. He chose the second option. When morning inspection came, he stood at attention in his workout clothes while every other cadet wore their proper uniforms. Commander Dexal walked down the line with slow, deliberate steps. Sorishi Commander was old and scarred, and his scales had faded to a dull gray that spoke of many years of service. His eyes missed nothing. He stopped in front of Kale. "Cadet Vasquez," he said, "you appear to be out of uniform." "Yes, Commander." "Do you have an explanation?" Kale kept his eyes forward. "No, Commander." Dexal studied him for a long moment. Something passed behind those ancient eyes. Perhaps recognition of what was really happening. Perhaps respect for the human's refusal to make excuses. 20 demerits, the commander announced, and 20 kilometers of punishment laps around the station perimeter. You will complete them before evening meal. Understood. Understood, Commander. The laps were meant to be brutal. The dual station perimeter track was designed for species with different endurance levels, and 20 kilometers was considered excessive punishment even for the hardiest cadets. Veth and his friends gathered to watch the Deathworlders suffer. They expected to see him struggle and gasp and eventually collapse. What they saw instead was something that confused them. Kale ran with a steady rhythm that never changed. His breathing was controlled and efficient. His pace was not fast, but it was relentless. Kilometer after kilometer passed, and he showed no signs of slowing. This was another gift from Earth. Humans were persistent predators. Their ancient ancestors had hunted by simply following prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No other species in the galaxy had evolved this particular ability. Human in good condition could run for hours without stopping. Kale finished his 20 kilometers with time to spare for dinner. He was sweating and his legs were tired, but he walked into the mess hall under his own power and ate his meal as if nothing had happened. Vith's scales had gone pale with frustration. The third attack was more dangerous. Someone contaminated Kale's water supply with a toxin native to Valorian swamps. For most species, the toxin would cause severe illness lasting several days. 4. Some it could be fatal. Kale drank the water without noticing the contamination. That night his body reacted. Fever struck him hard and his stomach cramped, and sweat soaked through his sheets. In his dreams, he was back on Earth, fighting through jungle fevers and mountain sicknesses that had nearly killed him during training. His immune system went to war. This was perhaps humanity's greatest biological advantage. Earth's environment was so hostile and so filled with pathogens that human immune systems had evolved to be incredibly aggressive. They could adapt to new threats faster than almost any other species in the galaxy. By morning, the fever had broken. Kale was weak and tired, but he was alive and functional. He made it to morning training only slightly pale. The medical officer who checked him later was amazed. "Your body neutralized the toxin in less than 12 hours, she said. "Most species would need a week of treatment to recover. Humans are resilient," Kale replied. The word spread through the academy. The Deathworlder had shrugged off a toxin that should have put him in the medical bay for days. Fear began to mix with the hatred in the eyes of his tormentors. They were running out of ideas, and Kale was still standing late at night. When the academy was quiet, Kale would go to the gymnasium alone. He needed to train in ways that he could not show during regular classes. Needed to stay sharp in the empty gym. He moved through combat forms that were nothing like what the academy taught. These were techniques designed for survival, not sport strikes, aimed at vulnerable points that would end fights instantly. Movements that flowed from one attack to another without pause. The efficiency of a predator that could not afford to waste energy. He did not know that a maintenance drone was watching from the shadows. He did not know that its recordings were being sent to someone who was very interested in what the human could really do. But even if he had known, he would not have changed anything. He was what Earth had made him, and soon everyone at the academy would understand what that meant. The invitation came 3 weeks after his arrival. A message on his terminal at 2 in the morning. "Emergency drill," it said. "Report to Cargo Bay 7 alone." Kale read the message twice, then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had been patient for a very long time and was finally being given permission to stop. He got dressed and headed for Cargo Bay 7. The hunt was about to end, but not in the way his enemies expected. The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Kale Vasquez stepped onto Galactic Academy Station for the first time in his life. He carried nothing but a simple duffel bag over his shoulder and wore the standard gray uniform of a new cadet. His eyes moved slowly across the massive arrival hall, taking in every detail, the way a hunter watches a new forest. Earth had taught him that lesson well. His home planet carried the official classification of Deathworld Sigma 7 in galactic records. That single designation told other species everything they needed to know about where he came from. A world of crushing gravity and extreme temperatures. A world filled with predators in the oceans and on the land, and even in the microscopic realm. A world where the very air carried diseases that could kill unprepared visitors in days. And somehow, humans had not only survived there, but had become the dominant species. Kale had grown up in the mountain regions of what was once called South America. He had learned to hunt before he learned to read. He had broken bones and fought infections and survived things that would have killed most beings in the galaxy. None of that showed on his face as he walked through the orientation hall. He simply looked like a young human male of average height with brown skin and dark hair cut short in military style. His eyes were brown and calm, and revealed nothing of what moved behind them. The whispers started almost immediately. Other cadets from dozens of species watched him pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. A group of Sureshi with their tall bodies and shimmering scales actually stepped backward as he approached their nostrils flared as they caught his scent. To their sensitive smell, he probably carried the markers of a predator. Species, they were not wrong. A Melvari female with 4 arms and large dark eyes leaned toward her companion and spoke in what she thought was a quiet voice. "Is that really a human?" she asked. "I thought they were still restricted to their home system." "Apparently. Not anymore," her companion replied. "The council must have lost their minds." Kale heard every word, but his expression never changed. He had expected this. Humans had only joined galactic society 3 generations ago. They were still considered newcomers and primitives by many of the older species. The fact that humanity had advanced from stone tools to space travel in what the galaxy considered an impossibly short time only made other species more nervous. They did not see human achievement. They saw human aggression. Kale made his way to the registration desk where a bored-looking Catherine sat behind a holographic display. Catherine had a hard exoskeleton and multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked softly as Kale approached. "Name." "Planet of origin," the official said without looking up. "Kale Vasquez." "Earth." The clicking stopped. All 6 of the Catherine's eyes focused on him at once. "Earth," the official repeated. "Deathworld, Sigma 7. "That is correct." A long pause followed. The Catherine's mandibles moved in what might have been discomfort before. It returned to its display and processed the registration. "Dormitory Block 9. It finally said, "Commander Thexal will be your primary instructor. Report to orientation in 1 standard hour." Kale took his room assignment and walked away. He did not miss the way the official's eyes followed him until he was out of sight. Dormitory Block 9 turned out to be the oldest section of the station. Walls showed their age, and the lighting flickered occasionally, and the temperature control seemed to work only when it felt like cooperating. Kale's room was small and sparse, with a bed that was slightly too short for human proportions, and a window that looked out at the cold stars. He set his bag down and allowed himself a small smile. They had given him the worst room in the worst block, a test to see if the Death Whirler would complain or break. They did not understand that he had slept in worse conditions during survival training on Earth. He had once spent 2 weeks in a jungle where everything from the insects to the plants to the water itself was trying to kill him. A flickering light was nothing. He unpacked his few belongings and made his way to the mess hall for the evening meal. The room was large and filled with cadets from across the galaxy. Conversations stopped in waves as he entered. He got his food from the dispensers, simple protein and vegetables that the system had calibrated for human nutrition, and found an empty table in the corner. He had barely started eating when 7 figures surrounded him. Their leader was a Sureshi named Veth Corallianchale. Had already memorized the names and faces of every cadet in his year. Another survival habit, and he knew that Veth came from one of the wealthiest families in Surishi space. The young alien was tall, even for his species, with scales that shimmered between blue and purple and eyes that burned with entitled anger. Behind him stood 4 more Surishi, 2 Melvari, and a Catherine whose mandibles clicked with barely contained aggression. "You are in my seat," Veth announced. His voice was loud enough to carry across the entire mess hall. Every conversation died. Every eye turned toward the confrontation. Kale looked at the table and then at the chairs around it. None of them showed any sign of belonging to anyone in particular. "I do not see a name on it," he said simply. Veth's scales flushed darker with anger. "Deathworlders do not belong here," he said. "This academy is for civilized species, not primitives who crawled out of evolutionary hellholes. Go back to your mud planet before you embarrass yourself." His followers laughed. The sound was sharp and meant to wound. Kale set down his eating utensil and looked up. His brown eyes met Veth's golden ones without flinching. There was no anger in his gaze. There was no fear. There was simply a calm assessment. The way a predator might look at something that had not yet proven itself to be a threat. "I am eating," Kale said. "You are interrupting my meal. I would appreciate it if you would leave." For a moment, something flickered in Veth's eyes, some ancient instinct buried deep in his genetic memory recognized the danger in that calm voice, but his pride was stronger than his instincts. "You would appreciate it," Veth mocked. Listen to the primitive trying to use big words, more laughter from his group. Kale returned to his food. "I have said what I needed to say," he replied. "You can leave now, or you can stand there. Either way, I'm going to finish my dinner." Veth's hands clenched at his sides. For a moment it seemed like he might attack right there in the mess hall, but there were instructors present and security, cameras watching, and even his family's wealth could not protect him from the consequences of starting a fight in public. "This is not over," Veth promised. "Deathworlders do not belong among us. We will make sure you understand that." He turned and walked away with his group following. The mess hall slowly returned to normal as conversations resumed, but the glances that came Kale's way had changed. Some held pity for the human who had just made powerful enemies. Others held curiosity about what would happen next. A few, mostly from species that had dealt with humans before, held something like concern, not for Kale, for the 7 cadets who'd just declared themselves his enemies. Kale finished his meal in peace. His face revealed nothing of his thoughts, but inside he was already planning and preparing and remembering. On Earth, he had learned that the most dangerous predators were not the ones that roared and charged. The most dangerous predators were the ones that waited, and Kale Vasquez was very good at waiting. The corridors of the station were empty at this hour. Emergency lighting cast long shadows on the walls, and the only sound was the constant hum of the life support systems. Kale walked with unhurried steps toward Cargo Bay 7. He knew this was not a real emergency drill. The Academy's actual alert protocols used different systems and different codes. He had memorized all of them on his first day, because that was what you did when you came from a world that was always trying to kill you. You learned the rules, you studied the environment, you prepared for everything. This message was a trap, and he was walking into it with his eyes wide open. Some might call that foolish. Kale called it necessary. He had tried patience. He had tried endurance. Had absorbed their attacks and their insults and their petty cruelties without responding. But some predators did not understand anything except strengths. Some threats had to be dealt with directly, or they would never stop. Tonight, he would teach them what it meant to threaten a human. Cargo Bay 7 was located in the industrial section of the station, far from the dormitories and classrooms. This part of the station was used for storage and maintenance, and it was almost completely deserted during the night cycle. The security cameras here had a reputation for malfunctioning at convenient times. It was the perfect place for something unofficial to happen. Kale paused outside the cargo bay doors. He took a slow, deep breath and let it out. His heart rate remained steady. His hands were relaxed at his sides. Fear was not absent from his mind, but it was controlled and channeled, and useful fear was just another tool when you knew how to use it. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside cargo. Bay 7 was vast, massive shipping containers rose toward the ceiling like metal mountains. The lighting was dim with large pools of shadow between the scattered work lights. The air recyclers hummed softly, and there in the center of the Bay 7, figures waited for him. Vith Corallian stood at the front of the group. His scales had taken on a darker shade that indicated aggression in his species. In his hand he held a shock baton, a weapon designed to deliver painful but non-lethal electrical charges. The others held similar weapons for Sureshi, including Vethwol Melvery, with their forearms each gripping a baton. The Kethrin, whose mandibles were spread wide in what his species considered an intimidating display. 7 against 1. They thought those were good odds. You actually came. Veth said with genuine surprise in his voice. I thought you might be smart enough to ignore the message. Kale set his bag down slowly. I had nothing better to do, he replied, laughed. But there was an edge to the sound. Something about the human's calmness was wrong. Anyone else would have shown fear by now. Anyone else would have tried to run or call for help, but the Deathworlder just stood there with those brown eyes that revealed nothing. No instructors here, Veth announced. No security cameras that work. No witnesses. Just us and you. We are going to teach you a lesson about where primitives belong. His followers spread out into a semicircle. Classic intimidation tactics. They were trying to surround him and cut off his escape routes. Kale watched them move and analyzed their positions with the part of his mind that never stopped calculating threats. They were making mistakes. They stayed too close together, which would limit their movement when the fighting started. They held their weapons wrong, with grips that suggested training for sport rather than real combat, and they had positioned themselves so that they would get in each other's way if they all attacked at once. They were bullies, not warriors. They had probably never faced anything that truly fought back. I have tried to be patient with you, Kale said. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the silent cargo bay. I have tried to wait for you to get bored. I have let you sabotage my equipment and steal my belongings and poison my water. I thought that maybe if I just endured, you would eventually stop. He rolled his shoulders, and something in his posture changed. The relaxed stance became something else, something that the ancient prey animal instincts buried in every species recognized immediately. He was no longer a target, he was a predator. But you do not seem to understand what I am, he continued, so let me explain. The Catherine shifted nervously. Compound eyes were picking up micro-expressions and body language that its conscious mind could not interpret, but that triggered deep genetic warnings on Earth. Kale said, everything wants to kill you. The gravity crushes your bones over time. The sun gives you cancer. The bacteria and viruses in the air can destroy your organs. The weather can freeze you or burn you or drown you. And those are just the passive threats. He began to walk slowly toward them, not retreating, advancing. The active threats are worse. We have predators with teeth designed to tear through bone. We have poisonous creatures so small you cannot see them. We have plants that will kill you if you brush against them. Everything on my planet is locked in a constant war for survival. Veth raised his shock baton. Stay back, he ordered, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. And humans, Kale said, are the winners of that war. Not because we are the strongest or the fastest or the most venomous. We won because we are the most adaptable, the most persistent, the most creative at finding ways to kill things that are trying to kill us. He stopped about 5 meters from the group, close enough to see the uncertainty in their eyes, far enough to react to an attack. My ancestors hunted animals that could outrun them by simply following them until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They killed predators with nothing but sharpened sticks and the willingness to die rather than give up. They survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that killed most of the life on our planet. His eyes moved slowly across each of the 7 faces in front of him, and all of that, all of those millions of years of evolution and survival and death. It is in my blood. It is in my bones. It is in every part of what I am. Veth's scales were pale-mouthed. Malvery were gripping their weapons so tight their knuckles had changed color. The Catherine's mandibles had stopped their aggressive display and were now pressed close to its face in a defensive posture. I came here to learn, Kale said, to serve with honor, to prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. I have been polite. The word hung in the air like a threat. I have been patient. I have been restrained. He let the silence stretch for 3 heartbeats. But you have run out of my patience. So now you have a choice. You can put down your weapons and walk away, and we never speak of this again. He paused. Or you can find out what happens when a Deathworlder stops being polite. Veth's hand trembled. For a long moment, it seemed like he might take the offer. Some small rational part of his brain was screaming at him that something was very wrong here, that this human was not afraid, because the human had nothing to be afraid of. But pride is a powerful thing, and Veth Corallian had too much pride to back down from a primitive "get him." Veth shouted, and 7 beings with weapons charged at one unarmed human. They thought they knew how this would end. They were wrong. The first Sureshi reached Kale a fraction of a second before the others. He was tall and fast, and he swung his shock baton in a wide arc aimed at Kale's head. It was a good attack by Academy standards. By Earth standards, it was predictable, and slow. Kale was no longer standing where the baton was heading. He moved with a fluidity that seemed almost impossible, slipping under the arc of the swing and stepping into his attacker's space. His best hands found the Sureshi's arm. With practiced precision, one hand on the wrist and one on the elbow, he twisted. The joint lock was simple and effective, the kind of technique that worked on almost any species with a skeletal structure. The Sureshi's body followed the direction of the pressure, because the alternative was a shattered elbow. He went down hard, and Kale's other hand was already moving, striking a nerve cluster at the base of the neck with exactly the right amount of force. The Sureshi went limp-conscious, but unable to move. His shock baton clattered uselessly on the metal floor. 3 seconds had passed. The Kethrin came next, its mandibles spread wide in a threat display that would have frightened any species in the known galaxy. The gesture was designed to make prey freeze with terror. Kale stepped directly into it, moved toward the threat instead of away from it, because the Kethrin expected fear and retreat. Instead, it got a human who understood that the space inside those mandibles was actually safe. Too close for the Kethrin to bite, too close for its arms to swing effectively. Kale's fingers found the nerve cluster behind the cranial plate. Every species had weak points. Kale had studied them all. Pressure applied, the Kethrin's legs buckled, and it collapsed sideways. Its nervous system temporarily overloaded. 5 seconds total. The 2 Melvari attacked together. They were smarter than the others and had trained as a team. 4 arms each meant 8 weapons converging on Kale from multiple angles. He could not dodge all of them. He did not try. He let one baton strike his forearm. The pain was sharp and electric, and it traveled up his arm like fire. His brain registered the damage and filed it away for later. Right now, pain was just information. The other 7 potential strikes were more important. He caught the second Melvari's lower arm and pulled. The motion was small but precisely timed. It threw off the Melvari's balance and sent her stumbling into her partner. For 1 instant, they were tangled together. That instant was enough. 2 strikes, 2 nerve points. Both Melvari dropped. 9 seconds. The remaining 3 Sureshi had stopped their charge. They stood frozen about 2 meters away with their weapons raised, but their bodies refusing to move forward. Their eyes were wide. Their scales had gone pale. They had just watched 4 of their friends brought down in less than 10 seconds by an unarmed human who moved like nothing they had ever seen. Kale looked at them. He was not breathing hard. His face was calm. The only sign of the fight was the slight tremor in his left arm where the shock baton had connected. "You can still walk away," he said. They could not. Pride and fear and the knowledge that they had already committed to this made them charge. It was the wrong decision. Kale did not fight like the training simulations. He did not fight like any species they had encountered. Fought like something that had evolved on a world where hesitation meant death, where mercy was a luxury that prey could not afford, where every fight was potentially your last and had to be ended as quickly as possible. The first Sureshi swung high. Kale ducked and struck the inside of the knee. The joint bent in a direction it was not designed to go. The Sureshi screamed and fell. 11 seconds. The second Sureshi tried to tackle him. Kale used the momentum against him, stepping aside and redirecting the charge into a stack of cargo containers. The impact was loud. The Sureshi did not get up 11.5 seconds. Was the last one standing. His shock baton trembled in his hand. His scales had gone almost white. With terror all around him, his friends lay groaning on the floor. The human stood in the center of it all, without a scratch on him. Please. Veth whispered. It was the first honest thing he had ever said to Kale. Kale moved. It was not fast from his perspective. It was simply efficient. One step to close the distance, one hand to knock the weapon aside, one strike to a pressure point that would cause intense pain, but no permanent damage. Veth crumpled. 12 seconds. Silence filled Cargo Bay 7. The only sounds were the soft moans of 7 beings who had just learned a lesson about the universe they would never forget. Kale stood in the center of the bay. His breathing was controlled. His eyes moved across the fallen forms, checking for anyone who might try to continue the fight. No one did. He walked over to where Veth lowered the floor. Surishi's eyes were streaming with tears of pain, and his body shook with tremors. Kale crouched beside him. My world has 1,000 ways to kill you, he said softly. The gravity alone would crush your bones over time. The bacteria would colonize your organs within weeks. The predators would hunt you for food, and the weather would freeze you or burn you or drown you depending on the season. He paused. We survived all of that. We did not just survive, we conquered. We became the apex predators of a planet that was trying to kill us every single day. Veth whimpered. I came here to learn. Kale continued. To serve. To prove that humanity belongs among the stars. I have been polite. I have been patient. I have been everything your species considers civilized. He leaned closer. But do not ever forget what I really am. He stood up. You will not report this because you cannot admit that 7 of you lost to 1 human. I will not report this because I do not need to. We are done. You will not bother me again. You will not bother anyone else at this academy again. If I hear that you are bullying other cadets, I will find you. He picked up his bag. And next time, I will not be gentle. He walked toward the exit. Behind him, 7 cadets lay in various states of pain and shock. None of them moved to stop him. None of them said a word. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. Cargo Bay 7 was silent, except for the quiet groans of beings who had just discovered that the universe contained things far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The corridor outside. Kale paused. His left arm was throbbing now that the adrenaline was fading. The shock baton had done some damage that would need attention, but not yet. He walked back to his dormitory through empty hallways. His footsteps echoed softly. His face revealed nothing inside his chest. His heart was finally starting to slow down from its controlled combat rhythm. He had not wanted this. He had hoped they would take his offer to walk away. But some lessons could only be taught through experience. Tomorrow, the academy would be different. Tomorrow, everyone would know what had happened in Cargo Bay 7. Even if no one spoke of it officially, tomorrow the Deathworlder would no longer be prey. He reached his room and went inside. The door closed behind him. Only then did he allow himself to sit down heavily on his bed. Only then did he allow the exhaustion to show on his face. Fighting was easy. Restraint was hard, knowing exactly how much force to use. Enough to stop them, but not enough to cause permanent harm. That was the real challenge. He had passed the test. He hoped he would not have to take it again. 3 days passed after the incident in Cargo Bay 7. No official reports were filed. No disciplinary hearings were scheduled on paper. Nothing had happened at all, but everyone knew the academy was a closed environment and secrets did not survive. Long enclosed environments, whispers spread through the dormitories and classrooms like ripples on water. 7 cadets from powerful families had cornered the Deathworlder in a Cargo Bay 7. Cadets with weapons against 1 unarmed human, and the human had walked out untouched, while the 7 had limped back to their quarters in silence. The details changed with each retelling, but the core remained the same. 12 seconds, 7 attackers, 1 human. The way other cadets looked at Kale changed before. They had seen a primitive from a backward planet. someone to mock or avoid or pity. Now they saw something else. They saw the calm eyes that never seemed to blink at the right times. They saw the relaxed posture that could shift into something dangerous without warning. They saw a predator that had been hiding in plain sight. Cadets no longer blocked his path in the corridors. They moved aside with a respect that bordered on fear. The mess hall fell quiet when he entered, and conversations resumed only after he had taken his seat with Corallian and his group were nowhere to be seen in public spaces. They attended classes and training sessions, but they kept to themselves. Their scales had not returned to their normal color. They flinched at sudden movements. They had nightmares that they refused to discuss. The summons came on the fourth day. Commander Dexal wanted to see Cadet Vasquez in his office. Kale walked through the administrative section of the station with his usual measured pace. He had been expecting this. Someone in authority had noticed what happened, even if no one had officially reported it. The commander's office was sparse and functional. No decorations or personal items. Just a desk and 2 chairs and a window that looked out at the stars. Tafsel sat behind the desk. His old scales were dull in the artificial light, but his eyes were sharp. "Sit," he said. Kale sat. For a long moment, the commander simply studied him. Those ancient eyes had seen countless cadets pass through this academy. They had watched wars and treaties and the rise and fall of civilizations. They missed nothing. Cargo Bay 7. Dexal finally said. The atmospheric sensors recorded elevated stress hormones from 7 individuals approximately 3 days ago. Very unusual readings, fear responses, pain indicators, the kind of biological signatures you see in combat situations. Kale remained silent, curiously. The commander continued. Only 1 individual in that cargo bay remained calm throughout the entire event. Only 1 biological signature showed controlled stress response rather than panic or aggression. He leaned forward slightly. Would you know anything about this environmental anomaly, Cadet Vasquez? Kale met his eyes without flinching. I would not know anything about that, Commander. A long pause, something that might have been amusement flickered across the commander's scarred face. No, I imagine you would not. He leaned back in his chair. Your tactical assessment scores have been interesting. You consistently perform at exactly the level needed to pass. Never more, never less. As if you are deliberately hiding your true capabilities. Kale said nothing. I have been reviewing the security footage from the gymnasium. Dexal continued. The cameras there have better maintenance schedules than the ones in the cargo bay. Late at night, when you think you are alone, you train differently. You move differently. You fight differently. For the first time, a slight tension appeared in Kale's shoulders. You have been holding back in every combat simulation and training exercise since you arrived, the commander said. Considerably. I did not want to discourage my classmates, Commander. How considerate of you. The sarcasm was gentle, but unmistakable. Thul stood and walked to the window. The stars outside were cold and distant and eternal. Stop it, he said. Commander, stop holding back. This academy exists to train warriors, not to coddle the egos of privileged children. If your classmates cannot handle being outperformed by a human, that is their problem, not yours. Understood. Understood, Commander. Dexal turned back to face him. The Galactic Council debated your species once. Did you know that? No, Commander. It was about 3 of you generations ago. When humanity first made contact with galactic civilization, some members of the Council wanted to quarantine Earth, to contain your species before you could spread. They were afraid of what you might become. He walked back to his desk. The debate lasted for 2 standard years. Very thorough, very careful. All the proper procedures were followed. A pause. Do you know why they ultimately decided against the quarantine? No. Commander. Dexal's mandibles clicked in what Kale had learned to recognize as a Sureshi laugh. Because by the time they finished debating, your species had already established colonies in 3 star systems. You did not wait for permission. You did not ask if it was allowed. You simply went. He sat down heavily. That is what terrifies them, Cadet. Not your strength, not your aggression, not even your evolutionary advantages. What terrifies them is that you cannot be stopped by anything as simple as disapproval. Kale considered this. Is that why you accepted me into this academy, Commander? Because you are not afraid. Dexal's old eyes studied him. I accepted you because I have been a soldier for longer than your species has had space travel. I have seen what happens when civilizations grow soft, when they forget that the universe is dangerous and unforgiving. They fall. He gestured at the stars outside. Somewhere out there are threats that we have not discovered yet, enemies we have not imagined, challenges that will require every resource and every ally we can find. When those challenges come, I want humanity standing with us, not against us. He paused. And I want to know what you are truly capable of before that day arrives. Kale nodded slowly. I understand, Commander. Good. Dismissed. Kale stood and walked to the door. Cadet Vasquez, he turned. The 7 cadets who experienced that atmospheric anomaly have submitted requests to transfer to different training sections. Sections that do not share any classes with you. I have approved these requests. Something like a smile crossed the old commander's face. It seems they have developed a sudden interest in administrative studies, far from any combat training. How unfortunate, Commander. Indeed, very unfortunate. Kale left the office and walked back through the corridors of the academy. Other cadets moved aside as he passed. Their eyes followed him with curiosity and respect, and something that was almost like awe. He did not let it affect him. He had not come here for their fear. He had come here to prove that humanity belonged among the stars, to learn and to serve and to show that his species could be trusted. Fear was just a side effect, a reminder that evolution had shaped humanity into something that the galaxy had never seen before: persistence predators, endurance hunters. The species that had conquered a death world and then reached for the stars. In the mess hall, Kale took his usual seat in the corner. Room was quieter than before, but not silent. Conversations continued around him. Life went on. He ate his meal in peace. No one approached his table with threats or insults. No one blocked his path or sabotaged his equipment. Lesson had been learned outside the window. Stars burned cold and distant against the endless black. Somewhere among those stars were the challenges that Commander Deshal had spoken of, threats and enemies and dangers that the galaxy had not yet faced. When they came, humanity would be ready. Kale finished his meal and returned his tray. Had classes tomorrow and training and a future to build. The past was done, the present was secure, and the future belonged to those who were willing to fight for it. Walked back to his dormitory through halls that parted before him like water. The human had proven his point, and the station, the academy, the galaxy itself, had learned something important. Some predators did not need to roar to be dangerous. Some threats did not need to show their teeth to be understood. And some species, forged in the fire of worlds that wanted them dead, were exactly what the universe needed, even if it did not know it yet. The end.